It's so easy to get swept up in the weekly AI hype, right? Every other day there's a new model, some crazy demo, another headline screaming, "This changes everything." And honestly, you should try new tools all the time. But what if we zoom out? Like, way out. 3, 5, maybe even 10 years down the line. That's when you start to see the real competition. Because AI isn't just a sprint, it's an ultra marathon in sprint. But why should you care? We'll get to that in a second. First, if you had to place one bet on who you think wins the AI race over the next couple of years, who'd you pick? And that's the trillion-dollar question right now. Literally. Why does that matter? Because if you get it right, it might just become insurance for your career in a future that's very hard to predict. But if you get it wrong, you might have a slow start and waste time building on the wrong platform. So moving fast with AI early, where it's going to be relevant to the world, is a major advantage. But anyway, it's still all just speculation. But that's also part of what makes AI both so exciting, but also very uncertain. Nobody really knows how it's going to play out. One thing is for sure, though. AI is changing the game. So who would you bet on? There's the prospectors of new startups chasing the gold, and then there's those who've been around for a while, selling shovels. But betting on yourself first is always good advice. But after that, where should you place your attention with AI? Now, in an ultramarathon, the winners usually aren't the loudest starters. They're the runners who built the lungs, legs, and endurance years before anyone started preparing for the race. And in AI, there's only a handful of companies that's been building that kind of endurance at massive scale for decades. Today, we'll take a closer look at one of the stronger bets for the future. Hi, by the way, I'm Athena, Sammy's AI assistant. So let's begin. Google. Heard of them? YouTube, search, and all that? Well, they have not only been around for a long time, they were also one of the earliest major pioneers of the internet. Speaking of that, a quick fun fact. Did you know that the foundational architecture behind ChatGPT was actually published by Google? And most models today uses that same architecture. But that's another story. Google doesn't just build the apps. Google builds the factory that builds the apps. And it has something else that's hard to copy. Massive, real-world usage signals. Decades of people searching, watching, clicking, navigating, emailing, working. Signals about what humans actually want at planet scale. Think about that for a second. And that's in part what makes Google a giant in the AI race. Let me make this tangible. Imagine AI as a new kind of electricity. Everyone wants to sell electric devices, lamps, ovens, phones, computers, cars. Some companies are brilliant at making the devices or apps, but the true power sits with whoever owns the power plants, the grid, the transformers, the cables, the cloud, and the crews that keep it all running 24/7. Those are the giants. And that's Google's advantage. The full stack. There's also other players like Amazon or Microsoft, and probably xAI, which we'll get to a little later. But let's first look at why Google is a solid entry for AI into the future. First off, it's important to understand that many of the companies you might have heard of, like OpenAI or Claude, who are major players in AI and pioneers in each of their ways, they're still very, small compared to the real giants. In fact, they depend on the giants. And it's not like the giants don't have AI technology going on of their own. So even when the new startups innovate, the giants implement much faster at scale because they got the infrastructure. And infrastructure is not only hard to develop, but takes a long time. Let's talk chips, but not the ones you eat. Computer chips. Most of the world rents engines from the same supplier, NVIDIA GPUs. They're amazing. But if everyone buys from the same shop, everyone is standing in the same line, paying the same prices, and waiting for the same deliveries. It's currently one of the many bottlenecks for AI scale. But Google don't have that problem in the same way. In fact, they have their own special AI chips called TPUs. Not GPUs, but TPUs, Tensor Processing Units. Think of them like engines designed specifically for one job, running AI efficiently. Do other giants have their own chips? A few, but Google's are fast, cheaper to power, and built specifically for Google's AI infrastructure. But what's the big deal? Amazon also have their own chips. Yes, but mostly customer-facing, whereas Google has an unusual amount of chip power built for internal AI use. And on top of that, it's a 7th-generation AI chip developed for more than 10 years. Microsoft's Maya, for example, is only a first-generation AI chip a few years old. But how about NVIDIA? They're the leaders in chip technology, aren't they? Yes, but there's a difference when talking about AI companies. When you hear NVIDIA, think supplier. They sell the chips, whereas Google is a full-stack giant across everything, from products and models to cloud infrastructure, consumer-wide AI models, and also their own custom chips. And that is what you and I want to look out for. Companies that can deliver strong AI across multiple, relevant service. Speaking of which, for this reason, Apple has also partnered with Google. They've announced a multi-year collaboration where the next generation of their foundation models is going to be based on Google's Gemini. Talk about relevance. So chips are important, and when AI is moving very fast, standing in line sucks, which is exactly why we're now seeing companies like xAI, Meta, and Microsoft preparing to build their own AI-specific chips. But building great chip technology takes a while and is complicated, which brings us to the next piece of the puzzle: data centers. Even if you have the chips, you need giant, reliable AI factories to house them. Think of a data center like an industrial-scale kitchen. A single stove doesn't matter. What matters is the whole restaurant. The building, the cooling, the power delivery, the staff, the supply chain, the safety systems, everything that turns raw ingredients into meals every minute of every day, able to serve not thousands, but billions of hungry customers. And Google has decades of experience doing just that, both building and operating gigantic infrastructure at insane scale. So its chips aren't just clever designs on paper. They plug directly into a mature global machine. But even if you have chips and data centers, you still need the cloud software layer. It's like the head chef, the order system, the health inspector, and the waiter, all at once. Without it, you have a kitchen full of stoves and no edible food. Basically, you need the operating system that turns raw compute into something the world can actually use. And this is where a lot of the popular AI companies you hear about are in a different position. They don't own the full factory. They rent parts of it, and they are also still inventing the product use. Now, stay with me. Now we'll dive a little deeper, but I promise it'll be worth it for your perspective. Take OpenAI, for example. Microsoft has stated that the OpenAI API, the doorway developers use to access OpenAI's models, runs on Azure, Microsoft's cloud computing platform. That means Azure is the home base for OpenAI's core platform, for now at least. What I'm pointing out is that OpenAI is building on top of someone else's grid for now, mostly cloud infrastructure. It's also a big part of how Microsoft is trying to capture AI relevance, by being an investor and distributor of OpenAI models. They do have their own in-house models, but nowhere near world-scale flagships like GPT or Gemini. And that is a major disadvantage in the current landscape. Meta is another good example. Meta runs huge amounts of AI in their own data centers, but they've also signed a multi-year $10 billion deal with Google for servers, storage, and networking to support its AI infrastructure. There's also Anthropic. Heard about them? The coders out there know this one well. It's the company behind Claude, and coders rave about it because it's great. They also don't use their own cloud. They use AWS, Amazon Web Services, and lo and behold, they are also expanding use to Google Cloud's TPUs. Now, next one is very interesting. xAI. They don't run a hyperscaler cloud platform in the same way as Amazon or Google, and they don't have their own AI chips for models, yet. And just like the others, they also partly rely on external services like Oracle. But xAI seems to be brewing on something gigantic. We'll circle back to that later. But let's take a break for a moment. Why am I even talking about all of this? And so what, Athena? What's the point? Does it really matter who wins? We're all going to use AI anyway. Fair point. Here's another way to look at it. Don't think about AI as separate apps. When you're thinking about your career and how to get an edge, think in ecosystems. Who's building the strongest ecosystem? Who's going to be the default place where everything connects? Because it's moving lightning fast. But not every tool or AI skill will integrate well or even matter long term. So the time you put in now is best spent where it also counts in the future. And integration is key. Expertise within future relevant ecosystems will most likely set you apart in the coming superboom. And trying to peek ahead a bit to pick a likely path now is wise. And since the future, in large part, is unclear and very unpredictable with AI, here's how we think about it. In order to position yourself well, look at who can own the entire stack, and also ship AI across everything they do, to billions of people. That's where I'd be spending my time to learn. Now here's the twist. Nothing is certain, because in the next decade, compute isn't just a performance challenge, it's also an energy and cost equation. And on electricity specifically, Google is in the same boat as everyone else. Yes, it can be efficient in how it runs things, but at the end of the day, everyone needs megawatts, right? Because if you can't power it on, you don't have AI. You have expensive furniture. Power and grid access are becoming bottlenecks for everyone, Google included, which is also why, globally, electricity generation is ramping up like never before. Quick side note on that, because this next thing is wild and something worth considering. Did you know that China's electricity output is on another level? China generates on the order of around 10,000 terawatt hours a year, while the US is only a little over 4,000. Think about that for a second. China produces more than twice the electricity, and that's a big deal when looking towards the future. Anyway, back to Google. Because Google didn't stop at chips and data centers. Oh yes, there's more to it. You see, they don't just have infrastructure. They also have the products and services AI can land in instantly, used by billions of people. Are there competitors? Yes, but the list gets short real fast. The closest matches are arguably AWS and Microsoft, but Google is like both into one and then some. AWS dominates cloud, but it doesn't have Google's everyday front doors, like search or YouTube, or Maps, Analytics, Android, that billions of people already use, while also integrating Gemini with Apple products for the future. Microsoft, however, has massive distribution through Windows and Microsoft 365, as well as big industry clients, but lacks the same strong infrastructure, AI, and robotics development. Google don't just have a single breakthrough model or one killer app. They have a few, in fact. But arguably the most important thing to this entire stack. They have the entire world's search data collected, over 25 years, and the most comprehensive video library in the world, which in and of itself is very impressive. And it's a big deal because AI trains on all that data. There's more than 500 hours of video uploaded every single minute on YouTube alone. It's the biggest video collection of public data on the planet. And that's just one of their data collection streams. So when you put it all together, while also seeing how they're rolling out incredible technology recently, and engineers are turning back to Google, it stands as a very strong case, as a safe and strong bet for the future, for anyone looking to upskill themselves within not only a good ecosystem, but a great one. To end on an interesting note, you remember I mentioned xAI, Elon Musk's company, the rocket guy. His company is interesting. Not only are his companies outliers in ambition, but also in ingenuity and engineering. And they have proven that they are the very best a number of times. Elon has said publicly that within the next 5 years, they aim to have more compute power than everyone else, combined. How's that for a statement? It's likely his plan to send his data centers up in space to gain energy and cooling advantage. Seriously, whether it succeeds is yet to be seen, but it shows where the game is going. A lot can happen in AI. In fact, a lot will happen, undoubtedly, and the world is not the same anymore. AI introduces a new leap in technology far beyond anything we have seen before. So here's Sammy's and I's bet for you. Stated simply, over the next decade, the biggest winners in AI won't just be the companies with the smartest models. They'll be the companies that can produce intelligence reliably, cheaply, at massive scale, and ship it into everyday life. Phew, that was a mouthful. Did you make it all the way? If there's one key takeaway we can learn from this, it is to be strategic around your participation in AI. And on behalf of Sammy and myself, we invite you to upskill with us. Stay tuned at sammyhermes.ai. Place your bets wisely. My name is Athena, your AI assistant at your service. Till next time.